I think TV licensing may be in serious trouble with this one, because you'll know that TV licensing employs a somewhat aggressive approach in trying to convince you to buy a TV license. But on this occasion, it might also be breaking the codes for advertising. Allow me to explain. One of you guys sent me this screenshot, which quite clearly shows an advert from TV licensing. You can see that it's sponsored there, just to be, I know you can see it's an advert, but you can see it says sponsored there. So it's quite clearly an advert. And it says at the top, you need a TV license. That's it. No qualifying text, no asterisk, no pointing you to any other terms or qualifications. It just says you need a TV license. Buy now. Now, what if you don't need a TV license? What if you see this advert and you are led to believe somehow that that's true, but you don't need a TV license? That would make this wrong. Now, let's get a caveat out of the way first. There may be, now I don't believe this, but there may be some wizardry and trickery in the background that somehow they're tracking this viewer of mine and they know for fact that they were watching some kind of live TV and therefore it triggered an advert to say you need a TV license. Or, I don't know, they were logged into iPlayer on the same browser or something of that nature. I don't know. But I doubt it, because I don't think it's that sophisticated. Or, as I edit this, that the advert's completely fake and someone else has paid for this advert to go up to make them look bad. Yeah, I know, I don't believe that either, but I'm a lawyer, so I think of these things. So if that were true, that it's nothing to do with TV licensing. But I don't think that's true. But anyway. So aside from that caveat, which would make this potentially correct, apart from that caveat, which I don't believe, I think is fanciful, to be quite honest. Then we need to look at the advertising guidelines, because just like everybody else that advertises, there are two advertising codes with which they must comply. There's the broadcasting and the non-broadcasting kind, CAP and the BCAP. BCAP for broadcasting codes. Now, this is the CAP code, which applies to non-broadcast adverts. And there's quite a lot of things in it, but very broadly speaking, it must not mislead you. The advert must not mislead you. It must not make a claim that's not justified. It must not make a statement that isn't justified. It must not mislead you into thinking something. It must not exaggerate, all those kind of things. All the kind of common sense things that you think an advert shouldn't do, they probably shouldn't do it. Now, you might remember I've done some videos before, and I've sort of poked fun a little bit at the ASA for banning an advert off the back of a single complaint where somebody says, it doesn't look like it really should do that, and they've banned the advert. So I had to play the whole video for you so that you can make up your own mind. Obviously, it wasn't an advert by the time they've banned it, but I played the whole video for you, one of which was Land Rover. And there's more than one I've done. But let's take a look at this, because this works both ways. Now, the bit in yellow here broadly sets out what they look at, along with the rest of it, obviously. It says the ASA will take into account the impression created by marketing communications, as well as specific claims. It will rule on the basis of the likely effect on consumers, not the marketer's intentions. And so it doesn't matter what the marketers think about their adverts and what they want them to say. What matters is how you, the consumer, the end viewer of those adverts, whether you are misled, whether you think that it's inaccurate or offensive or whatever. Now, some bright spark in the comments is doubtless going to say, aha, this is a public body. This doesn't apply. Well, with great respect, you'd be wrong, because I do think about these things. I may not always get it right, but on this occasion, there is a page that backs me up. The ASA website itself says government and local authority ads, and says local authorities, government and public bodies should be aware that their ad campaigns, like those of other commercial companies, are subject to the rules in the advertising codes. The ASA will intervene if an ad by a public body crosses the line, whether that's through being harmful, offensive, or misleading. Now, being the lawyer, not that I'm defending TV licensing here, but being the lawyer, there is a potential argument that what they're doing is considered part of enforcement and not advertising as such. But I don't buy that one. That's an argument a lawyer might try and run if they were accused of being misleading in this advert, but I don't think it's a very good one. It's an argument, but it's not a very good one, as we often say. Back to this. So the ASA say that this does apply to government and public bodies. It says this year, the ASA investigated 5 posters by Nottingham City Council, which were intended to encourage members of the public to help beggars by donating to charities which provide specialist support rather than giving cash or donations directly. It says the ASA ruled that 4 of those posters reinforced the negative stereotypes of people who begged were likely to cause serious or widespread offence. And so, indeed, they do regulate public bodies, advertising, and this does apply. So back to the misleading bit, and just a reminder of what that advert looked like itself. So to me, this is an advert. It's a sponsored thing. It appears on a website. It happens to be IMDb looking up Toy Story 2. Obviously, no connection there with Toy Story 2, just to make that crystal clear. But the advert appears on this page, encouraging the viewer to buy a license. Now, let's go back to the misleading aspect, in my view, of that advert. It just says you need a license and then buy now. So moving down, let's have a look at these. There's a few sections that might apply, some stronger than others. The broad one, the most important one, 3.1, marketing communications must not materially mislead or be likely to do so. And this might well apply here, because if somebody viewing that advert does not need a TV license, and that is if they are not watching or recording live TV, or they're not using BBC content on BBC iPlayer, because that doesn't apply to S4C, even the TV licensing website itself confirms that, and the strange one that you haven't installed any apparatus for that purpose, then you don't need a TV license. If you've not done any of those things, you don't need a TV license. So if somebody saw that advert and they don't need a TV license, then it's misleading, in my view, because this says marketing communications must not materially mislead or be likely to do so. So that advert would fall foul of this code if somebody saw that and did not need a TV license legally. 3.3, marketing communications must not omit material information or information required to be included by law. Now, material information certainly here would be if you watch or record live TV or consume BBC content through a BBC iPlayer. That is the materially missing information, because without that, the advert is wrong. Then it goes on to say, this includes providing such information in a way that is unclear or untimely, or in a way that consumers are unlikely to see or hear it. Now, they might provide the information on the website, but if you just see that advert and you don't go to the website, you are unlikely to see or hear the information required. Regard will be had to any limitations, etc., such as timing and space. Now, there was plenty of space available here because all of the bit above and below the text is blank. So no excuse there. There's lots of space available to put any qualifying information, and it was just not there. So regard to that, they will fail. And material information is information that the average consumer needs to make an informed transactional decision. Because albeit you're not purchasing a product or a service as such, you're paying for a license if you legally require one, then this is material information to a transaction. It is a material and monetary transaction if you're buying a license. So this would be the requirement for a TV license must be there as material information for the average consumer would need to make an informed decision to that transaction. It is missing, so in my view, they're also in breach of 3.3. There's 3.7 and 3.11. So substantiation, 3.7. 3.7 under substantiation. Now we're getting to realms now where people might argue this doesn't apply. This is usually applying to claims made within adverts and so on. But there is a claim made, so it does apply, strictly speaking, in my view, because it says you need this, and you would presume that it's a legal requirement. It says before distributing or submitting marketing communication, they must have proof of the claim. So if the claim is you need a license, they need to prove it. They need to show why they say you need a license. Under 3.11, exaggeration. Again, this is something that could be argued to not apply, but strictly speaking, it could apply as well. Marketing communications must not mislead consumers by exaggerating the capability or performance of a product. So in a strict sense, the advert saying you need a license might be exaggerating the fact that you need a license for whatever it is that they were doing at the time. And so again, it falls foul here because it would be misleading if they don't need a license, because there is no reason provided. And without any reason, without any basis, this advert is purely misleading. So I think they're in trouble with that one. And bearing in mind what I said, adverts have been banned before now with a single advert. And it does apply to public bodies or any company operating on behalf of public bodies and so on. So complaints may be upheld and they may take action to prevent these adverts from appearing. But more generally, if you see this advert and you are somehow led to believe that you need a license, just remember, it may not be true. You may be misled now if you saw that advert, because unless you watch or record live TV or you consume BBC content on BBC iPlayer, then you don't need a TV license, or you've installed something for that purpose. I've done lots of videos on TV license, when it's needed, when it's not. I think it's a bit of a draconian bit of legislation forcing you to pay for a license for something that if you don't use, you shouldn't have to pay. And my personal view is, if you're watching a TV company that is not the BBC, who benefits from the TV license fees, and they are completely separate, completely detached, why on earth should that go to them? I just think it's really bizarre. It's a little bit like paying a government fee because you go to a local gym as a private company. Why on earth would you pay a fee to the government so that you can go to a private company gym? That sounds ridiculous. That's exactly what TV license is, in my view. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've seen the advert. More importantly, if you've seen adverts like it, send them to me, and feel free to report it to ASA. But I hope you found that interesting. Thank you to the viewer for sending it to me. And as always, thank you for watching.